a new hero to discuss, and 16 matches in the upcoming weekend of the Overwatch League to look forward to. All that and more this week on The Control Point. Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of The Control Point. I'm Paulsible. With me is Kenobi and lafon, and this week we're going to start off by talking about Overwatch's newest upcoming hero. And then we're going to check out the teaser for the San Francisco Shock Championship skin. After that, we'll break down the top stories to keep an eye out for in the upcoming weekend of 16 matches for the Overwatch League. First off, though, let's talk about that new hero. Echo is the newest face being added to the Overwatch lineup. Kenobi, this weekend, we had a PTR showcase casted by some of Overwatch League's finest to show off the new hero at the highest level.
We also had Jeff was on stream with, I believe it was Sinatra and Tim the Tapman to reveal the hero, and we saw a lot of the abilities, and that hero looks very strong. Just the first sight of her, I was like, with that ultimate and with her just the way that she can move and the cooldowns that she has, her kit just seems incredibly strong, but it also has a lot of ability, I think, for really good players. Like we saw Rascal playing it, for instance. Like really good mechanical based players are going to have a field day with that hero, and I think they're going to have a lot of fun with it.
I mean, there's, to add to that, I think we've got to talk a little bit about what the character really entails, guys. And it's an interesting hero because I think this is the first time in a long time in Overwatch that we look at a character and we're like, all right, let's see how this can kind of integrate into the newer roster. When you think of the last DPS character that was brought out, Ashe, she was kind of there. She's cool, but she doesn't really have a lot of, shall we say, utility. She's a hit scan hero and doesn't really give much else beyond that. Echo is very different, right? She's got obviously the duplicate, which is, I think, possibly the least interesting part of her kit, weirdly enough, despite it being her ultimate. I think, her mobility, her ability to have burst damage on squishy heroes and even on tanks is a huge deal, right? Looking at her kit from top to bottom, Kenobi, I think you can talk about duplicate in detail a little bit, but I think the most interesting thing to me is her sticky bombs and her E, the focusing beam, because I think between those two, it makes her a very, very versatile hero, and then obviously add on to that the mobility, and you've just got a winning combination.
And I think going back to the ultimate specifically, because that's the one kind of people freaked out about, right? Where it was just like everyone saw that out and they're just like, what is this? But if you haven't seen it yourself, it is, you basically clone yourself and become an echo of a hero on the enemy team, no matter what it was, and you gain all their abilities, you gain their ultimate, and you also gain 650% ult charge generation, which is kind of insane. You're going to at least get one single ult. It lasts for 15 seconds. And the other thing that's kind of incredible about this ultimate is that when you die, you don't actually die. You revert back to Echo. So you're basically getting kind of like a second life on top of that. So this ultimate, I agree with lafon, it's probably like the least interesting part of her kit, but it's probably the part that needs the most tuning out of
especially when you consider you can now get a Reinhardt, right? Get 2 Earth Shatters in like 20 seconds, and you get a giant health pool that when it's depleted, you just go back to normal. That's got to be crazy for some of these high-end players. You're talking your Rascals, your Prophets, your Hawksaws, who can seemingly play every hero anyways.
It's going to be interesting to see how it evolves in the pro meta, but I think for once, I'm extremely excited about the addition of a new hero at the pro level, and I can't wait to see how it plays out.
He's also excited? Surefour, because he can play anything. This is like his character. This is a buff to the Toronto Defiant if this character comes live during the season.
Flex gods are certainly happy, but they're not the only people pretty happy this week. We get a teaser pretty recently for the new San Francisco Shock Championship skin. It was only about a 30-second teaser, but supposedly the boys on the Shock are pretty happy about it. Kenobi, last year we got the London Spitfire one for the inaugural grand finals, and the Winston skin was kind of fun. What are we thinking about the Shock skin coming out in the near future?
So I think it would have to be, because when we talk about like the previous skin that we had, which was the London skin, they had Winston because Winston was a very prevalent part of their team. Just Gesture in specific was a really good Winston and played it pretty significantly throughout the season. I think for the Shock, the one thing that I wonder is it going to be a GOATS character, or is it going to be this kind of 2-2-2 character that we saw them actually win the championship with? They played GOATS through the majority, so something like I think maybe Reinhardt, Brig, maybe Reinhardt, not Zarya, because I think Zarya is going to be what Sinatra picks as his MVP skin. So that's kind of where I would be thinking about it to go. If it's on the shock, I think probably Goats would be where I would be putting my money on.
See, I was thinking Sinatra might pick up the Doomfist skin as his personal MVP. Okay. He did come out, especially toward the end of the season, looking pretty fire on that pick.
LaFon, I mean, he was the best one.
What are you thinking?
I mean, it would kind of like work if it was, for the grand finals MVP as well. Mirror that, it could be just a Sigma skin straight up. So that's that's a possibility there as well.
Sure, fair enough. Let's get on to a little bit more somber news. Down to the tier 2 level, as we have to talk about Atlanta Academy, last year's 2019 Season 2 champions for North America, and the Gauntlet runner-up suspend operations. They will not be competing in contenders for the foreseeable future.
This is a rough place to be. I mean, if you're a fan of Tier 2, Atlanta Academy has always been one of the teams. They've had a lot of pedigree throughout the history of contenders. But I think this is a case of this is less as bad as you think it is. Reminder, the team that came second in Gauntlet promoted a ton of their players, right? Mm-hmm. Gator, Hawk, they're gone. Funny Astro as well, promoted to the Overwatch League. So I think the team that came in second isn't the team that is currently or was in contenders this season. They were also struggling in performances. And so I think for Atlanta Academy, that, with some of the issues that came up with the team in this most recent season of contenders, it became a case of we already accomplished with Atlanta Academy what we needed to. It's time to let it have a break and then come back when it makes more sense. And obviously with some of the worldwide occurrences, I think that just made the choice a little bit easier to stomach for the management at Atlanta.
Sure, we do have to talk about some of the players who didn't get promoted simply because they couldn't. I'm looking at one 15-year-old prodigy in particular, Sugar Free. What is this man gonna do? I mean, a lot of the Atlanta Academy players have already put out looking for team tweets. Mm-hmm. Is Sugar Free going to stay with the org that's gained him so much pedigree? You think this was basically all the way back to last night's leftovers. This is kind of the same core, more or less, of that organization. So what's Sugar Free going to do? I have to imagine everyone in NA is going to want this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking for, like, if you need a DPS player in contenders right now and you're an academy team, which there aren't that many left, but like if you can get the money, and because I think probably the buyout for Sugar Free right now, it's weird to me. I wonder if like there's something in the Atlanta org where they're just like, maybe we want to just keep Sugar Free specifically, make him a streamer or something, or just sign him as like a content creator and then wait for him to be old enough to play an OWL. But if he's not going to do that and he wants to compete, every team in NA, even in EU, should be looking out for this kid. This kid is a star in the making, and he needs to be on a team if he wants to play competitively still.
I think his age works against him just a little bit here. He needs to be on a team to continue to improve. This is not a situation like Leave or Shy. He's not turning 18 soon. He still needs to play at the competitive level. I think this is him taking time to kind of reassess his situation and then make a choice after that. So Sugar Free, definitely a player to keep an eye out on, but I have high hopes for him in the future. So I doubt this is the last we'll see of Sugar Free. Definitely.
Oh no. And we were talking earlier about those flex gods. Sugar Free is basically one of those in the making, can basically play anything on the board. So gotta watch to see if Echo hits the tier 2 scene this year, how he might be able to run rampant on that. But speaking of things that are rampant of a sort, let's move on to the preview section of the show, as there are no matches in the Overwatch League for us to review, as there was no play this past weekend outside of the show match, but we don't need to go over that. What we do need to go over is the mega weekend upcoming in the Overwatch League. 16 games being played in 48 hours. There's so many matches, teams, storylines to look forward to, but what we have to focus in on, and what we kind of agreed here, is that we have to focus on the most relevant things that we haven't really seen. So we're going to put the Atlantic Conference a little bit on the side for a moment. We've seen a lot of their stories. We could talk about New York, Atlanta, or, Toronto, Boston, but everybody's sort of getting the idea of those teams. Instead, let's talk about the Pacific East Division and honestly just the Pacific Conference in general, because we've gotten little to no actual screen time for any of these teams this year.
And I think for the thing that I want to specifically talk about when we go and talk about this kind of, I guess, for the Pacific Conference and this regional meta, I think that's something that, because we've seen basically the same meta from the same teams for the past couple weeks of Overwatch League, and now we're getting an injection of some new talent, some new teams, and probably some new ideas and philosophies on how to look at things like hero pools, how to look at the meta. So I think this is going to be a really cool, even though there's 16 games and that's a lot, I think this is going to be a really cool, kind of litmus test to see how the teams in the East are thinking about the game, how the teams in the West are thinking about the game, and we can contrast and compare. And I think that's one of the coolest things about Overwatch League is these different variations on the meta that we can have at one point. I think it's going to be really cool to see what these teams bring to the table.
And for the first time, I think this is for the first time, I think, in Overwatch League's history, we're going to see that idea of if scrim metas, quote unquote, are a real thing, right? Because we're as Kenobi said, we're finally seeing those Eastern teams. Will the game change via the fact that we're seeing via the Atlantic having played sort of the first week of hero pools, or will we see something very similar in mirroring out that other composition? So I'm very excited to see that for the first time in Overwatch League history. I think we have possibly some of the most interesting Overwatch to be played.
Well, we're excited about the games, but we also have to be excited about the teams, right? And let's break down a couple of our top contenders here. Kenobi, I'm going to start with the Shanghai Dragons. Now, a few months back, they held their own invitational, and they stomped all the other teams coming out of China. Rumor is that Shanghai is one of the strongest teams in general right now, at least according to the Springbok Stock Exchange.
Yeah, sometimes you have to, really think about the Springbok Stock Exchange and, put it in your head, but it doesn't really matter too much. It's really what it's going to matter is when we see them play actually this weekend. And I think for the Shanghai Dragons, this team, based on what I saw in the Shanghai Masters, they are incredibly good. I mean, they've swept Chengdu, who is my favorite team probably in Overwatch League, and it was not really that close at all. I mean, Lip comes out of nowhere, is just an absolute monster of a player, and when you look at this team, like just across the board, they have every single thing filled. Hit, scan, roll, you have DM. You want to play a tank, your tanks, stand, one, and void, pretty good as well. Li Jae Gong, who is probably going to come in and be arguably the best main support in the world right now in Overwatch League. So I think from top to bottom, when you look at this organization of Shanghai Dragons, they are one of the premier organizations. And going from where they were at season 1 to now, it's just an incredible story.
Oh, and by the way, they still have Fleta. You didn't mention that.
They do have Fleta. They do have Fleta. I forgot about that.
You were talking about regional meta. They literally define it with Fleta.
The meta. Fleta is the meta.
Yeah, we all know that. But what we also know is that we've yet to see the Seoul Dynasty either this season. They haven't played a match quite yet. This weekend, they've got an interesting lineup. First, they play the Fuel, I believe.
Yes, and then
they're going to match up against the Gladiators. Now, LaFon, like I said, we've yet to see the Dynasty, but considering all the pickups they made in the offseason, we still have quite a bit of confidence in this squad.
So here's where I think one of the most interesting things is Kenobi and I have disagreed about this. Kenobi thinks that Seoul is a very interesting storyline. I personally don't. And the reason I say that, and this is going to come across as perhaps controversial when you talk about Seoul Dynasty, because they have Profit, they have Gesture, two fantastically huge names in Overwatch history. But I feel that there is so many questions from Seoul Dynasty from prior seasons 1 and 2, which they still have not answered. They had good players season 2, and they never really did anything with it. They were, sort of mismanaged through the coaching staff, too many coaches in the kitchen, so to speak. And I feel if Seoul does not solve that problem first, then they're going to have issues throughout the later stages of this season as well. So I want to see from Seoul, the easy talking points are Profit, it's Fits, it's Gesture, and so on and so forth. But they've got great tanks. Marvel and Michelle are both fantastic players in their own right. I'm very high on Marvel. And so I'm curious to see how that evolves throughout the later stages. So for me, I want to see the top end first set out, and then we can talk about Profit and how wonderful and fantastic he is, as we've all seen in the past.
And then kind of to give my take on the side of it that me and LaFon had this disagreement on is I think just the story of Seoul Dynasty as the team that is they're the only Korean team in Overwatch, right? That is representing the representing Korea, which means that they already have some sort of baggage, as Korea has always throughout esports had this ideal of being the best region, right? Always just like going very far back, they've always been the region that tops everyone else in these kind of games. And I think based off of that already, they're a good storyline. But going back to having Prophet and Gesture and Vidocin, these are world champion players. And they're moving. And last year they had a really bad year, and they're moving now to Seoul. They're in a better environment, I would say. And are they going to be able to replicate that? You know, they have a lot of issues with like just straight up wanting to play the game. Are they going to be able to, you know, negate that and play with these new players on Seoul? They probably have a lot of control as well. So I think that if it fails, that's even a bigger storyline. If it fails, like them failing is like a really big storyline too. Them winning is also really good, but them failing, it just means that this is their second chance and they haven't been able to do it.
Well, they're not the only ones who need to replicate success this season of former years. I'm talking about the San Francisco Shock, everybody, as Shock, you know, they won last year very convincingly, completely convincingly, dominated the league in the playoffs, right? But we've only seen them play one game so far this season, and it was a little bit of a weird one against a pretty easy opponent. So it's not the greatest sample size for this championship squad. This weekend, they've got 2 matches as well. We need to see them come out of the gate swinging, lafon.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And I mean, considering Dallas Fuel was who they played up against, you kind of think, okay, we got to ignore that match entirely. No offense to Fuel fans, because it's a rough place down there. But
they'll take offense to it. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's fine. But I want to talk. I think for the San Francisco Shock, we're not going to see the same dominant team as last year. I don't think the league is set up for that. You obviously don't have the same level of dominance in a single team composition. It's going to change from week to week, so that makes a huge deal right off the top. So I think if you're a San Francisco fan, or if you're even a player on the San Francisco Shock, you don't want to get caught up in that idea of being the best, right? That's not your goal. Your goal is to win the league, absolutely. But I think how you approach that is more important than the numbers that show up on screen. Whether it's a 3-0 win getting those first 3 maps, or a 3-2, doesn't matter. The only important thing is the win in that column. And I think for San Francisco Shock, if they can avoid sort of that mentality of we have to be the best bar nothing, then they'll be okay, because they still have some fantastic players, and I don't think the coaching staff is being degraded that much from year to year.
I mean, if anything, the San Francisco Shock, their coaching staff has been upgraded, right? You have Krusty, who is, I think, at this point, arguably the best coach in Overwatch League in general. You've also picked up, I think it was Arachne, I don't know exactly how you pronounce that, from Talon, who was also incredibly pivotal in how they were playing in their success that they had last year in Season 2. Junkbuck as well. I think this team, like, just from top to bottom, when you look at San Francisco Shock, I think it's very hard to make an argument that they aren't just the best team in the league. You can carry from every single role with the players that they have. Their coaching staff is phenomenal. The org is just phenomenal in of itself. I think San Francisco Shock is the team to beat, and I want to see them actually just like continuously just stomp these opponents, because I don't think there's anyone really that they're going to play this weekend that can step up to them.
Well, they play both LA teams this weekend, so you've successfully angered an entire city, Kenobi.
I know what I said.
I can't say I disagree with you, even as a Gladiators fan myself. Also, we have to consider the hero pools are going to be a thing for the Shock, and they're one of the teams with a wide berth when it comes to the depth of talent on their roster. I think they'd be hard-pressed to find a weekend, a meta, where the hero pools didn't line up for them in some way, shape, or form.
This first one actually might be the worst, because Moth will not get to be on his signature hero, and that's probably it.
Yeah, and that's probably it. I mean, for San Francisco Shock, like you mentioned, like we haven't even seen Super, I think, went on Watchpoint when they were announcing that we were going online. He talked up like Ons as being like this incredible Widowmaker, and Widowmaker, I believe, isn't banned this weekend.
Widowmaker is in the bans. As we've said a couple times on this show, are Sombra, Soldier 76, Winston, and Lucio. So
I try to make sure. So the
McCree and the Widowmaker, the hit scan special, both coming back into play.
So Ons could be someone that we see this weekend, and that kind of just like once we see them, if they are as good as people are talking them up to be, then that just adds another just like tool for the San Francisco Shock and makes them even scarier than they were beforehand. And they were pretty scary.
Well, that'll be it for our preview section and the meat of our show, but we've still got overtime to deal with. Now, if this is your first time tuning into the Control Point, the way overtime works is I'm going to rapid fire ask these two some questions, and they're only going to get a sentence or two to answer. This is where we have a little bit more fun of the show, but stick around after overtime because we will have a Twitch chat Q&A. But now, let's get into it. Kenobi, I'm going to start with you. The Battle of LA was this weekend in the PTR showcase, admittedly, and we got it off to a beautiful start with a hammer battle from the Torbjorns to win the first map.
I mean, we should just start every Overwatch League game like this. Like every single game, just start with that Torbjorn 1v1. That's the best way to do it.
Well, the devs also patching things in the best way possible. Lafon, this week, Echo debuted on the PTR and had some interesting mechanics to start, but they were patched out very quickly.
Yeah, this is good. The fact of the matter is the devs said they want to be more proactive with patches, and I think this falls under that MO. Congratulations, devs, and I hope they keep it up.
It's not the only thing to be on the PTR patch that's a little bit odd, if not questionable outright, Kenobi. Tracer got some blink reworks in this patch, allowing her to access some vertical mobility.
Yeah, and this is I wonder if they're going to keep this or if they're going to decide to fix it or if this is some sort of bug, because I saw Dante on stream kind of fiddling around with it, and he was getting to like high ground on like Anubis B, like some insane blinks that you can do. So if that sticks, Tracer's going to become a lot stronger, and it's absolutely nuts.
Lafon, the Overwatch League is moving fully online, and as such, the production team needs to move online, and more specifically into their work from home setups. This week they all posted their beautiful setups. How do you feel about them?
I mean, there's some sick setups there, but I gotta call it a couple of the keyboards there. Aside from a few Varmillo X, Sakura and Panda caps, there was only one real good one in there. So great setups. Keyboard name need a little bit of work.
Well, we can always count on you to criticize people's keyboards. Kenobi, Tizzy was announced this week for Lucky Future over in Contenders Korea. Lucky Future, they're just collecting ex-Overwatch League talent.
They really like ex-Overwatch League talent, and Tizzy is another addition to that team. I don't know how much is going to impact them necessarily, but can't be that bad. Tizzy's been around the block a couple of times.
Yeah, no, I mean, at this point, if they've got all the Overwatch League players, then they can't actually expect anyone to be able to play against them, right? So
Fisher's going to be
go
there.
with that at the very least. Lafon, the Overwatch League put on the PTR showcase. We talked about it a few times here, but how do you feel about this event in general?
It's fantastic. The more you get to engage with the fan base, the more you get to, we're in a really rough time right now. And the fact that players and, staff and everyone are able to come in and make an experience that's entertaining for the fans is fantastic. I want to see more of this, more sort of styles of keeping just everyone engaged. And so, again, I have nothing but good things to say. Congratulations, Overwatch League. You hit it out of the park on that one.
All right. Well, we're going to round out the show with a question for all of us here. I'm going to start with you, Kenobi. We've got a lot of teams playing in this upcoming weekend, but out of all of them, who is your sleeper team? Who are people not putting enough respect on for this weekend? Are going to come out the gate and shock everyone?
Chengdu Hunters, baby!
Chengdu, of course he goes with Chengdu.
No respect. There is no respect on the Chinese region right now. This is the respect we're gonna get.
Yeah, all right. It's okay, Kenobi. We understand your brand at this point. Lafon.
This is it's less a sleeper team and more a sleeper map that you really should keep your eyes out for. And hey, it's the Hangzhou Spark versus the Chengdu Hunters, because I think that one is going to be very, very good. I think it might actually be the best match of the weekend.
Well, I'll take that as an answer for Hangzhou. For me, I got to stick with my own personal team. I got to go with the LA Gladiators. Yeah. They only played one match. It was against a hard opponent, and it was close. They're technically at 19th on the leaderboard, and it's been that way for 2 months now. Not enough respect going to these guys. They even technically won the PTR Battle of LA this weekend. Although
they didn't lose it, but
I don't know if I would call that the most.
Did they win the Torb 1v1?
I think so. I think they won the Torb 1v1.
Okay,
if I remember correctly.
I'll give you that one then.
They did. Producer confirmed. So that's what matters. That's all that matters here. But that'll be it, everyone. Thank you for tuning in for this week of The Control Point. If you enjoyed, make sure you follow Elohel Esports on Twitch or YouTube, wherever you're watching from, and follow all of us on Twitter and help support us. We'll be back next week discussing how this packed weekend went and previewing week 9 of the Overwatch League. If you're live on Twitch, make sure you stick around for the post show where we slow it down a bit. We just kind of chat it up with Twitch chat. We get some Q&A going on in there. But for now, it's been Paulsible, Kenobi, and lafon. We'll see you next week on The Control Point.